Please be seated, and we'll start our hearing. I will now call to order the meeting of the Omaha Planning Board. The Planning Board members that are here today are Jeff Moore, Patrick Morris, Mike Pate, Jorge Sotolongo, and myself, David Rosacker, Vice Chair. Members of the city staff that are in attendance today are Dave Fanslau, Planning Director, Eric England, Assistant Planning Director, Mike Carter, Current Planning Manager, Robert Loco, I don't see him today, Planning Board Administrator, Jennifer Taylor of the City Law Department, and Debbie Hightower, Recording Secretary. Our rules of procedure are as follows. Notice of this hearing has been published. Copies of today's agenda are located on the table in front of us over here. You are welcome to come down and pick one up. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases have been recommended for layover, have already been heard, or are perceived by the Planning Board to be non-controversial. Therefore, will be read and voted on without the opportunity of your testimony. If you do wish to testify, you may have the case removed from the consent agenda. When each consent case is read, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will be removed. The case will then be heard in the order in which it appears on the regular agenda after we go through the consent cases. When the case is heard, you will have the opportunity to come to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on the regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant. And after the applicant states their case, we will hear from proponents, and then we will hear from the opponents. After both cases are heard, the public hearing will be closed, and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member requests additional information. When at the podium, please clearly state your name and address, speak into the microphone, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and the courtesy of others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We request that large groups select a spokesperson to represent that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has already been said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and with respect. In that regard, please remain silent while seated, and please turn off your cell phones at this time. Our decision to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decision made here today on conditional use permits are final and not forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the Law Department, all communications to the board members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the Planning Department so that they are all made part of the public record. The department will then transmit all that information to the board as well as to the rest of the public. A current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act can be found in a white binder in this room. And if you looked at the consent agenda prior to today, we did remove one case, number 16, from consent agenda. We will start with the first consent case. And as I said, I'll read through each one and ask you if anybody wants it removed. So the first item on consent is number 5, case C10-22-203, C12-22-204. Applicant Scott Brown, One Professional Square LLC, and it's on for layover. The request is the preliminary plat approval of Antler View West, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR, R8, and MU. This case was laid over at the August 3rd meeting. Location is southwest of 192nd Street and West Maple Road. Does anybody wish to have this removed from consent? Seeing none. And the second consent case is number 8. Case C3-22-286, applicants Terry Hogan, Greyhawk Point LLC. It is on for approval, and the request is the approval of an amendment to the city's master plan to revise the future land use plan from a community 80-acre mixed-use area to a community 165-acre mixed-use area. Location is 144th Street and West Maple Road. Anybody wish to see this removed? Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is number 9, case C3-22-287, C10-21-209, C12-21-210. Applicant is Westwood Solutions LLC, and it's on for layover. The request is a preliminary plat approval of State and Highway 133 addition, lots 3 through 8, outlots C and D, a subdivision outside city limits, approval of rezoning from AG to GI, along with the approval of a waiver from a PDZ present development zone. The location is northwest of State Street and Blair High Road. Anyone wish to see this case removed? Seeing none, go to item number 10, case C10-21-097, C10-21-098, C12-21-099. Applicants Brian Spencer, University of Nebraska Board of Regents, on for approval. The request is a revised preliminary and final plat approval of the UNMC Saddle Creek campus, a subdivision inside city limits with rezoning from GO, GC, and GI to CC, TOD2MX, and TOD1MX, along with repeal of the ACI2 overlay district from a portion of the site. The location is southwest of Farnham Street and Saddle Creek Road. Anyone wish to see this case removed? Seeing none. Item number 11, C10-22-310, C12-22-311. Applicant is First Management, Inc. It's on for approval. The request is a preliminary plat approval of Pacific Rose, a cluster subdivision inside city limits with rezoning from R1 to R5. The location is 9402 Pacific Street. Does anyone wish to see this removed?
Yes, please.
Okay. Now, where's my pen? Got it. All right. Moving on. We'll go to item number 12, case C10-00-040, C10-22-312, C12-22-313. Applicant Terry Hogan, Greyhawk Point LLC, on for layover. The request is preliminary plat approval of Greyhawk Replat 5, a subdivision inside city limits with rezoning from DR and MU to DR and MU, along with a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Greyhawk. The location is 14450 Eagle Run Drive. Anyone wish to see this removed? Seeing none, we'll go to item number 13, case C10-22-314. Applicant is Shiloh Jorgensen, on for approval. Request rezoning from R4 to R435. Location is 15469 Summerwood Drive. Anyone wish to see this case removed? Seeing none, item number 14, case C10-22-315. Applicant Jerome P. Gordman Corporate Center West, on for approval. Request approval of the ACI3 Area of Civic Importance Overlay District. Location is 10805, 10815, and 10825 Old Mill Road. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Seeing none, item number 15, case C10-20-045. Applicant Christian Brothers Automotive Corporation, on for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for North Streams. Locations 20111 P Street. Anyone wish to see this case removed?
Yes.
Seeing none?
Oh, wait, you want it off? You want that case removed?
No, I'm sorry. This is just to remove from the agenda. Okay, no, sorry.
Yeah, so if you remove it from the consent, means it's discussed with a public hearing here once we get started. So if it stays on consent, it's either approved or laid over. So for this one, it's on for approval. Do you want it to stay on consent?
Yes.
Okay,
sorry. My apologies.
that's okay, thanks.
That's all right. So case number 15 will stay on for approval. Item number 16. What's that?
16's off.
Oh,
17.
oh, that's right, I'm sorry. That's off the consent, my mistake. Number 17, case C10-22-316. Applicant Dale Williams, Kessler Hykens LLC. It's on for approval. The request is the approval of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District. Location is 3009 and 3011 South 84th Street. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Seeing none, move on to item number 18, or excuse me, 19, case C10-22-318. Applicant Casey's Retail Company, on for approval. Request approval of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District, location southeast of 204th and Wirt Streets. Anyone wishing to see this removed? Seeing none. Item number 20, case C11-98-254, applicant Jake Bleach, on for approval. The request is the approval of major amendment to the PUD, Planned Unit Development Overlay District, location southwest of 72nd and Seward Streets. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Seeing none. Item 21, case C8-21-233, applicant Westwood Solutions LLC. It's on for layover. Request is the approval of a major amendment to the large project special use permit to allow communication services in a GI district. The location is northwest of State Street and Blair High Road. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Seeing none. Item 22, case CH-17-257, applicant Ponca Tribe of Nebraska and Kraus Anderson. It's on for approval. The request is the approval of a major amendment to the large project special use permit in a GI district. The location is 5701 South 85th Circle, 5639, 5711, 5805, 5810, and 5820 South 86th Circle. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Seeing none, item number 23. Case C10-22-319, C8-3-089, and C8-22-320. Applicant is Patrick Ackerman. It's on for layover. Request approval of a major amendment to the special use permit to allow aviation services in the AV district, with approval of a major amendment to the special use permit to allow development in the ED North Hills Environmental Resources Overlay District, along with rezoning from DR and AV to AV. The location is northeast of 72nd Street and Bennington Road. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Seeing none. Item number 24, case C8-22-321, applicant Nick Brenner, Medard Inc., on for layover. The request is approval of a special use permit to allow convenient storage in the CC district. The location is northwest of 205th Street and Cumberland Drive. Anyone wish to see this case removed? Okay. Item number 25, case C7-22-322, applicant Leonel Asensio, LM&F Investments. It's on for approval. The request is approval of a conditional use permit to allow single-family residential detached in the GC district. Location is 2214 South 16th Street. Anyone wishing to see this removed? Seeing none. Item number 26, case C7-97-225, C7-08-166, applicant Alvin Cobus Children's Hospital, on for approval. Request is approval of a major amendment to the conditional use permit to allow hospital services in the GO district. Property is located within an ACI 2 area of civic importance overlay district. Location is 8200 Dodge Street and 8404 Indian Hills Drive. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Seeing none, number 28, case C7-00-250, C10. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I missed, yeah, Alvin. Okay, number 27, case C7-21-037. Again, Alvin Covas Children's Hospital, on for approval. The request is approval of major amendment to the conditional use permit to allow medical services in the LO district. Property is located within the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District. Location is 8534 Cass Street. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Seeing none, now number 28. Case C7-00-250, C10-22-326. Applicant Rob Cooksey, Wider Omaha Lutheran, on for layover. Request is approval of major amendment to the conditional use permit to allow secondary education facilities in the R4 district, along with approval of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District. Location is 15656 Fort Street. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Seeing none, number 29, case C7-21-121, applicant Todd Jakopovic, Elkhorn Youth Sports Association, Carroll Ash UBT Bank. It's on for approval. Request is approval of major amendment to the conditional use permit to allow indoor sports and recreation in the CC district. The location is 702 North 210th Street. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? So number 29 is removed. And item number 30, KC 14-22-323, applicant Planning Board, on for approval. Approval of the vacation of the alley right-of-way located between Saddle Creek Road and 50th Street north of Charles Street. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Number 30 is off. Case now, number 31, case C14-22-324, applicant adjacent property owners, on for approval. Request approval of the vacation of a portion of the 17th Street right-of-way located north of Nicholas Street to the northern terminus. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Seeing none, it will remain on the consent agenda.
Okay, Mr. Chair, so because we had several that came off, I'm just going to repeat those for the benefit of the audience and make sure there weren't any others desired to come off. So we took off number 11, 24, 29, and 30 from consent. So those will be heard in their regular spot on the agenda. Okay.
We all okay?
Do the
Okay.
motion.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda items number 8, 10, 13, 14, 15, 17, 19, 20, 22, 25, 26, 27, 31. Second.
Debbie, we have a vote?
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 5-0.
Do we have a motion for layover cases?
Motion to lay over cases 5, 9, 12, 21, 23, and 28.
Second.
Debbie, please get a vote.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 5-0.
Okay, the next two cases will be administrative meeting only, and there will be no public testimony. The first one is case C12-22-125, applicant Nick Brenner, Menards, Inc. Request is final plat approval of Menards subdivision replat 6, a subdivision inside the city limits. The location is northwest of 205th Street and Cumberland Drive. May we hear from the applicant?
Yeah, so that would be me. The board recommended approval for the preliminary plat back in the May meeting, approved by City Council on August 2nd. The final plat is consistent with the approved preliminary plat, still consists of 5 lots, 1 outlot, including a private street through the development. Staff recommends approval of the final plat subject to the 2 conditions in the report prior to City Council.
Any discussion from the board? If not, do we have a motion?
I move approval of the final plat, subject to addressing the two conditions in the report prior to forwarding the request on the city council.
Second.
Debbie, will you please take a vote?
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 5-0.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yes, thanks for reminding me of that. So all these cases that were on the consent agenda, there'll be no further activity today, and if you were here for that case, you're invited to stay if you wish, but if you'd like to leave, you may do so. Everybody stays.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Item number 2, case C10-22-241, C12-22-242. Applicant Stephen J. Gross, Costville Wholesale Corp. The request is a final plat approval of the SE 180 Maple Crossing, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to MU, location southeast of 180th Street and West Maple Road. We hear from the city.
Yeah, so this preliminary plat was recommended for approval back at September by the planning board and approved by city council October 25th. The layout is the same as the approved preliminary plat. It includes 7 lots and 2 outlots. Probably the largest change or the biggest change is the access to the Costco Fueling Center. They've been in coordination with Public Works, and the new plan provides increased stacking and increased pumps. So that'll be a good change with the final mixed-use development agreement. There are a few items that'll have to be addressed, both in the mixed-use development agreement and in the subdivision agreement before proceeding to council. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to MU, subject to an acceptable final mixed-use development agreement, and then approval of the final plat, subject to the 2 conditions in the report prior to city council.
Thank you, Rick. Any further discussion? If not, we have a motion.
Motion to approve the rezoning from AG to MU, subject to submission of 5 signed copies of the acceptable mixed-use development agreement, and approve the final plat, subject to meeting the 2 conditions of the recommendation report prior to forwarding to city council. Second.
Debbie, will you take a vote?
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 5-0.
Okay, the next, now the public hearing will open, so there's public hearing opportunities for the rest of these cases. The first case is a holdover, master plan referral. It's item number 3, case C3-22-300, applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. And the request is approval of the Southside Terrace Indian Hill Transformation and Redevelopment Plan, which was laid over from the 1102 meeting. Location is an area generally bound by L Street on the north, South 27th Street on the east, Y Street, Upland Park, and Washington Street on the south, and South 36th Street on the west. May we hear from the applicant? Kelly?
Good afternoon, Kelly Johnston Dorsey with the City Planning Department. Here to talk about the approval of the Southside Terrace Indian Hill Transformation and Redevelopment Plan. In 2019, the City of Omaha and Omaha Housing Authority received a $1.3 million Choice Neighborhoods Planning and Action Grant from HUD. The major deliverable from that grant is a transformation plan. A transformation plan is intended to serve as the guiding document for a revitalization of public housing units while simultaneously directing the transformation of the surrounding neighborhood and positive outcomes for families. There are 3 major components of the Choice Neighborhoods program: people, housing, and neighborhood. With people, it is to improve the outcomes of households related to education, employment, income, and health. With housing, it is to replace distressed public housing with high-quality mixed-income housing that is well-managed and responsive to the needs of the surrounding neighborhood. And with neighborhood, it is to create the conditions necessary for public and private investment to offer the kinds of amenities and assets that are important to families' choices about their community. Placing this within the context of Douglas County, it is in the areas within the very southeastern portion of the county. Zooming in a little bit, you will see that on the north it is L Street, south is Upland Park and the Kroc Center, to the east is 27th Street, and to the west is 36th Street. This area of town developed around 1883 with the stockyards and packing houses. Residential development soon followed with immigrant neighborhoods, quickly developing. Today you will see industrial areas between L and Q streets and on the eastern side of the planning area. Smaller single-family uses are primarily south of Q Street, and several service and program providers exist along Q Street. Southside Terrace itself, you can see kind of the greenish color, is approximately 10 city blocks on the southeastern side of the neighborhood. Southside Terrace is a series of 51 nearly identical buildings with 358 units. Southside Terrace opened in March 1940 with 55 buildings at 522 units. Over the years, many of these units have been combined to accommodate large families. Our planning process to create this transformation plan was centered around and originated with residents. There was a steering committee including the city, Omaha Housing Authority, and Canopy South. Our key partners were Brinshore Development, LRK, a planning consultant, and Lamper Nearson. We had an engagement team that helped plan and execute engagement, and a stakeholder committee shown here that met monthly to discuss strategies and recommendations. Additionally, we had focus groups to provide additional information and technical analysis, and resident small groups to provide the opportunity for deeper conversation with resident leaders. They gathered around English, Maimai, Spanish, Somali, and youth. We had 14 resident and community meetings were held over the course of our planning period. The first was a celebration in October 2019, and over 500 people attended. But we did a lot more than meetings. COVID-19 upended our original engagement plan. We had to get creative and we tried a lot of different strategies, as you can see here. I will highlight a few. We went door to door to conduct a housing survey, that is all 358 doors at Southside Terrace. We hosted pop-up events at our satellite office in a former Southside Terrace unit, which was on its way home for kids on their way home from Indian Hill Elementary School. We partnered with trusted organizations in the community to co-host events, and we mailed surveys to every single household within the neighborhood. All of this feedback provided us our goals and strategies for the plan. These are our goals just within the people section alone, and all of these goals have strategies. I won't go into these in details, but they really focus around children, their education, opportunities for enrichment, employment, income, and health. We will use case managers dedicated to Southside Terrace residents and partnerships with entities to provide targeted services, resources, and programs directly to Southside Terrace around these goals. For housing, we have fewer goals here, but the impact is certainly no less. With all 358 units at Southside Terrace will be demolished, and 2 to 3 times will be built in its place here and within the neighborhood and within the city itself. They will be replaced with replacement public housing units, affordable units, and market rate units, so every one of our developments will be truly mixed income and indistinguishable from one another. Within the neighborhood, we also have a variety of strategies under each one of these goals, looking at different housing types to provide within the neighborhood, high quality choices when meeting daily needs. Safety was a big concern noted throughout, and we've been working with the police department on these strategies and goals. A strong sense of place that is attractive and street life is welcoming, and that traveling in, out of around the neighborhood is intuitive, safe, easy, by car, walking, biking, or bus. We see neighborhood is really what pulls together the people and housing components together. HUD accepted this plan in March, and then since then we've added the redevelopment plan components per Nebraska Community Development Law. For implementation, shortly after we submitted this and it was accepted by HUD, we submitted a grant application for an implementation grant. So this is our plan. Our implementation grant will help fund the implementation of our plan. We were awarded this grant on September 15th, $50 million grant, and our end date, we need to complete this work by September 30th of 2028. The lead grantee is the City of Omaha. Our co-grantee is the Omaha Housing Authority. Our housing implementation lead is Brinshore Development. The City Planning Department is the Neighborhood Implementation Lead. Omaha Housing Authority is our People Implementation Lead. Our principal education partner is Canopy South, and our anchor institution is the Simple Foundation. we will work with several other organizations and entities that are already providing great work within the community. We will focus around people, housing, and neighborhood and create implementation committees around education, employment, health, youth, and neighborhood and housing. We have several partners. You can see the people ones kind of in yellow, who will help provide our people services and many others, not just these as well. Our housing partners, obviously Bridge Shore Development, Canopy South, and our residents within the neighborhood and Southside Terrace itself. And within the neighborhood, first and foremost, residents of Southside Terrace in the neighborhood and other representative organizations, including the Neighborhood Association, SONA, Simple Foundation, Heartland Workers Center, Omaha by Design, Bridge Shore Development again, our Parks Department, Police Department, and Public Schools. So with that, I will conclude my formal presentation. As you all know, I could go on and on about this project, and I know we have a few of our partner organizations here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Any other proponents that would like to speak?
Good afternoon, Joni Poor, Omaha Housing Authority, 1823 Harney Street. As Kelly said, we are the co-applicant along with the city. We are very excited to have been awarded the $50 million grant to implement this very ambitious but exciting plan. Just here to lend our support and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Can you maybe just give, for the benefit of the audience, kind of a timeline of events that will occur under this redevelopment plan?
Sure, and a lot of the specific timeline is going to be is still yet to be determined, but similarly to the redevelopment that's happened with the Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant along North 30th, the grant entire timeline is about 6 years. So we have about 3 times the units that we need to tear down and redevelop, though, in this instance. So we anticipate that the neighborhood will see activity with demolition and construction of new housing much more quickly in the Southside Terrace Indian Hill neighborhood, whereas in the north that it took maybe more around like 18 months or so to see grant funded housing, whereas we anticipate applications going in and redevelopment, relocation taking place and starting really first quarter next year, where we're going to be starting to do some initial relocation activities, and then demolition likely will some initial demolition activities will take place early next year. We will probably run a couple of our housing phases concurrently. I'm hesitant to say this exact quarter of this exact year because a lot of that still needs to be fleshed out. And we are still working up north as well. And so there's a lot of complicated dates and applications and different things that we need to figure out. Obviously, we don't want to submit competing applications to NIFA or to other locations. But I can say that we'll have phased developments that will happen on Southside proper and in the identified neighborhood that Kelly had pulled up on the map. And they'll be running concurrently, like you might see something happening in the neighborhood and at Southside Terrace, if that makes sense and is helpful.
Yeah, and I just want to say, just kind of an editorial comment here. I mean, this is so great for Omaha, and I appreciate all the work and the community partners that are involved in this as well, because this is so great for the city of Omaha. This redevelopment program, all the redevelopment programs are, but this is going to be transformational for that area. Yeah.
We're very excited about the opportunity that this brings to this community. If anyone's talked to Councilmember Palermo, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when he says, when is this finally going to happen? And then it finally has. Yeah. And he says that he's the first, he'll be our biggest cheerleader because he was the one who was the most skeptical. So we're really excited about this opportunity. It's very much an intact neighborhood and one of Omaha's first neighborhoods for a lot of people who came here from out of town, who came here for new work. So the chance for that community to look different and to expand and to grow is a great opportunity, not only for the city and for OHA, but the city as a whole.
Yeah, thank you.
Dialogue and feedback, I'm sorry.
Okay.
How's the dialogue and feedback been from in those discussions that you had with the communities?
I think that we've had very positive discussions. From OHA's perspective, we've had a lot of stops and starts. We actually have 2 board members in the room here today, too, who could echo the fact that over the years, we've talked a number of times as an organization about possible redevelopment of Southside Terrace. So it was really important to us when we were awarded the planning grant that what we said we were going to do and what the residents and the community said they wanted actually then moved into implementation. You can only get your hopes up so often and hope that something's going to happen and hope that something's going to change before you stop believing that it will. And so when we were awarded this grant and HUD came to do the announcement, I'm really excited to say that we had quite a few households at Southside Terrace come to that celebration and help hold the big check and be excited about the future of that. And I know that our neighbors are also excited too. If anyone's familiar with large public housing developments, some of the things that have happened with those is when you have over 50 buildings that all look exactly the same, that doesn't exactly fit into a neighborhood. It's not like, how maybe the block that you live on looks, right? So it feels very different from the neighborhood that exists now. We want to make sure that we help create a neighborhood that looks like it's seamless in the future. In addition to that, there's a lot of other activities that have happened in public housing that makes it inaccessible, like super blocks, lots of one-way streets, those sorts of things. So reconnecting the neighborhood is really important, and those are positive things that we've heard back from the community as well. We've also heard things like, how is construction going to affect us? This is going to happen while we live next door to it. So I think those are things that we're going to have to make sure that we talk with contractors and say, we need to be cognizant of this. These are realistic concerns, and people still need to live their daily lives. A lot of people, for a hilly neighborhood, a lot of people walk. And so we need to be cognizant about how people are still going to get around. You can't just shut down sidewalks when we have a lot of kiddos who still need to get to and from school safely, those sorts of things. But generally positive, those are a couple of anecdotal things that people have asked about.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joni. Anyone else on the proponent side wish to speak? Okay, anyone on the opponent side wish to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Eric, here from the city.
Yeah, so, anytime that we have the choice projects come up, I always take the opportunity just to state just, how great those efforts are, both for the community and, the work that's being done with, the city of Omaha, led by the planning department, along with our partners, OHA, Bryn Shore, Canopy South, Simple Foundation in this example. So, as Mr. Pate said, it is transformational. If you've been following along on planning board agendas or city council agendas in the past several years, the work that's been done on North 30th Street and now for Omaha to receive the second grant, it's very exciting. Yesterday at City Council, we had our Housing Affordability Action Plan that was discussed. There's a great need for affordable housing. What's really great with these projects and these units is not only is it affordable units, but it is mixed income units. And so we've learned a lot in the projects. Excuse me, my voice cracking. We've learned a lot with the projects that we've done in North Omaha, and we're going to continue that effort here in South Omaha, so we're excited. Staff recommends approval.
Before we take a vote, I just want to comment as well, just that the amount of effort that's put forth by, Joni and Kelly and all of the staff that's been involved in this and all the volunteers throughout the community that have done this. It's a lot of work, and they've done a tremendous job. To be able to get that grant right off the bat is a good thing. And I think just as Eric said, that we've struggled in the transformation of the types of affordable housing that really works for today's population. The old ways weren't always the best ways, and we're almost like building planned communities when we do these things with mixed incomes, mixed uses, and all kinds of things, which make it a much more habitable and pleasant place to live. So anyway, do we have a motion?
And second.
Debbie, will you take a vote, please?
Moore.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate.
Yes.
Solongo.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 5-0.
Okay. Item number 4 then, similarly, is the Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha, C3-22-301, request for the approval of amendment to the land use element of the city master plan regarding the South Side Terrace Indian Hill Transformation and Redevelopment Plan, which is laid over again from the 11:02 meeting. Location again is an area generally bound by L Street on the north, South 27th Street on the east, Y Street, Upland Park, and Washington Street on the south, and South 36th Street on the west. May we hear from Kelly again?
All right. Hello again, Kelly Johnston Dorsey, Omaha Planning Department. Before you with this case is to really bring our land use recommendations from the transformation plan in alignment with our master plan. So amending the future land use map in the city's master plan to match what is recommended with our most recent effort, obviously, with the transformation plan. So with this is future land use recommendations. It wouldn't change anything that is currently required or any zoning for any property right now. It is if someone wanted to come forward with a zoning change, this is what would be looked at. So it doesn't make any changes to anyone's property or anyone's property's rights right now. I just want to clarify that real quickly. Having just talked about our transformation plan and our implementation grant, I would like to take a moment to kind of toot our own horn. The city of Omaha is the city who has received those 2 implementation grants in as close proximity and dates as anyone in the country. There's only a handful, maybe 3, I believe, who've received 2 implementation grants, and we have 2 ongoing right now. So I think that just is a testament to all of our hard work and dedication and belief in this Choice Neighborhood Program. Bill Lukash, the former assistant director, is here now with Bridgeport Development, assisted with this, as well as Mariana Forel, who really worked a lot on this mapping effort in the redevelopment plan and throughout the process our 3 years as well. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Any other proponents? Okay. How about any opponents? Any opponents wish to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing.
Recommend
Eric?
approval.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Debbie, please take a vote.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Solongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Okay, now we'll be back to our regular agenda. Case, or item number 6, case C3-22-308, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. The request is approval of the disposition of city-owned property to an interested party. The location is north of 214th Street and Grover Streets. May we hear from the applicant?
Yeah, so I will represent the first part, just briefly explaining. Obviously, we went through a lot of detail in the pre-meeting. The adjacent property owner to the north and west, Merck, has requested to purchase this and has submitted an appraised valuation of $890,000. There is some case history that we went into detail. I won't get into any of that unless there are questions about that. So I would reserve the right for any further dialogue as we move along.
Okay, any other proponents?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board, David Levy, Baird Home Law Firm, 1700 Farnham Street, here on behalf of Mark. I do, if I might, just want to take a minute also as Chair of the Board of Commissioners of the Omaha Housing Authority, and just thank you for the kind words and the support of the last 2 items. It really is a transformational project. One of the reasons I came on the board 7 years ago, and kind of hard to believe standing up there holding the big cardboard check. A lot of work to go, but thank you for that. As to this item before you, just here to answer any questions that you might have. Appreciate your support.
Thank you, Dave. Any other proponents? Seeing none, how about any opponents wish to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Eric,
Staff recommends approval.
do we have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Debbie, please take a vote.
Pate?
Yes.
Solongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Okay, item number 7, case C3-22-309, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. And
You'll read both
we will also include case 16, or number 16 on this as well, and I'll read that at this time. It's C12-04-089, applicant Larry Jensen, River Place Rose LLC. It is on, excuse me, the request is the approval of major amendment to the mixed-use development agreements for Riverfront Place, and location is 520 Riverfront Plaza. May we hear from the applicant?
Good afternoon, Alex Jensen, Milestone Development, the developer, 6324 South 118th Street. We have what we think is a pretty great project here, a new condo building down the riverfront. However, we presented our plans to the neighborhood on November 21st, and we're moving forward with the plan as was presented. However, since that meeting, some concerns have been raised about what the mixed-use major amendment means for the surrounding buildings. And so for that, we're going to request a layover until the January meeting, until we have a chance to meet again with the neighborhood and work out some of those issues.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Don?
Yeah, Don Seaton, City Planning. I just want to thank the applicants for the work they've done with us so far. They've had a very challenging site to work with, and the project has evolved over time. And I think they've also done a pretty good job of reaching out to the neighbors, and I appreciate that they're looking at doing further outreach with the neighbors.
Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Don. Any other proponents?
Zach Fergus, Lamprey Nearson, 14710 West Dodge Road. Just want to add that early in the project we met with city staff August 4th, 2022, and were directed towards that major amendment of the agreement. And so that's how we got to kind of where we are today. And as Alex mentioned, we'll meet with the adjacent neighborhood to further clarify and address some of the issues.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, any opponents that wish to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Eric?
Yeah, so I'll just add a few items. Obviously, we received a lot of correspondence. Just for those in the audience and for the testimony, the major amendment is because there's a mixed-use development agreement, is the zoning in place because of the changes in what is currently established in the approved mixed-use district, the changes to allow the 17 units, and specifically as it relates to floor area ratio, we are required to do the major amendment to that mixed-use development agreement. So, the plans are consistent between the TIF case and the mixed-use project. I just want to make sure that's clear. Yeah, there's been, a lot of history on the site that we've talked about, and obviously this will be on a future agenda. Staff did have recommendations for approval, but we are obviously in support of the layover. So, to continue those conversations both with the applicant and city staff, as well as the applicant and neighboring properties and opponents or whoever may be concerned that we receive correspondence from. So.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion with the board?
Oh, sorry, if I could add one more thing. If the case does come back next month, we do not send out new notifications. So if it's laid over for 2 months, we do. But I just want to put that out there if anybody is in the audience, that if you received a letter for today's hearing, if it is back on the January Planning Board agenda, you will not receive a new letter. But you can definitely check in with staff in the next week or two to confirm that it's on the agenda. But it sounds like that's all the indications from the applicant. So I would assume January Planning Board.
Okay, I just want to make one comment to the applicant. As most of you know that are come here very often, we hold we hold in high regard the efforts for applicants to be able to reach out to their neighbors and keep them informed of what these projects are before they hit the public record, so to speak. And it's I guess I'm commending them for taking the opportunity here to set this aside for just a minute to allow everyone to get together and clarify any confusion that there might be. Having said that, do we have a motion on the first item, number 7?
Motion to lay over? Second.
Debbie, please take a vote on 7.
Sodolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Okay, now I'll take a recommendation on 16.
Move for layover. Second.
Okay, Debbie, please take a vote.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sodolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you. Now we will go to 11, I believe. Is that correct? All right. Number 11 is case C10-22-310, C12-22-311, and the applicant's First Management, Inc. Just setting aside, thank you all for coming. The request is a preliminary plat approval of the Pacific Rose, a cluster subdivision inside city limits with rezoning from R1 to R5. And location is 9402 Pacific Street. May we hear from the applicant?
Dan Dozal, Earhart Griffin
Dan.
Associates, 3552 Farnham Street. We're the civil engineers for the project. Project's been around for a little while. We've worked really hard. I'd like to compliment Mike Carter and Brian Haas with the Planning and Public Works Department. They worked with us really well, and we've been down this path a little bit before, but in our changing world, it was originally intended to be a one-lot subdivision with condominium regimes on the buildings. With the new world, the condominium financing, as my developer has said, is dried up and it's hard to obtain right now. So we've gone to a single family, or excuse me, single lots, single family approach. The plan hasn't changed from what was discussed earlier. It's just the lots. We've done a little bit of tweaking to meet certain setbacks based on comments that we received from both Planning and Public Works Department. Basically, we have 21 units. This is considered by my client to be step-down housing, higher end dollar-wise, but in their minds, this is sorely needed in this area. It's what do I want to say? We have a single approach. There's no other way. The only access we have, public access we have, is off of Pacific Street. And I think Ryan Haas can attest to this, but we're only allowed one way in and out anyway. We have 21 units typically. That would be about the equivalent of a 650-foot cul-de-sac, which is legal in the city of Omaha as well. I received one call from one neighbor with some concerns about traffic. There was another rumor about that we were going to go through OPPD's lot. That option was explored to line up driveways with the streets across the street. OPPD declined to participate anyway. So we're relegated to our lot only specifically. From a traffic standpoint, I'll let Ryan talk about that, but in our minds, in our experience, the 21 lots is not a big subdivision. So I'll let Ryan talk to traffic. Other than that, we're here to answer questions as they come up.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, how about opponents? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Please state your name and address, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Joe Jones. My wife and I live at 1009 South 93rd Court. That's in a place called Pacific Park. It's a group of 8 townhomes, and we're just, there's a OPPD substation right there on the eastern edge of this proposal, and we're on the, it's on the west edge of the substation. We're on the east side of the substation. So the only thing that would separate our group, our Pacific Park development, from this development is the substation, the OPPD substation. There are 8 units in Pacific Park. We make up about 1.8 acres. This is a proposal is 2 acres. Our exits, ingress and egress from our 8-unit area, we have 2 of them, both onto 93rd Street. So one of them is actually split. So there's actually 3 driveways that we can either come in on or exit from onto 93rd. And from 93rd, we can go south, take a right, and go onto Pacific Street. Or we can take various avenues and get onto 90th, We can head straight north and get onto Dodge in a couple places, or we can go north and take a left and get into the Regency area, or get on 96 and go north or south. We have lots of ways to avoid Pacific Street, especially during those high traffic times. We object on behalf of the Pacific Park Group, there's 8 owners. We object to the approval of this preliminary plat because we believe it is incompatible with the neighborhood for a couple of reasons. One, the density. As I said, there's 8 townhomes in ours, essentially the same size, the same area. They propose 21. The second problem, in addition to density, is the ingress and egress. They have one driveway onto Pacific Street for 21 units. I drove up and down Pacific Street, and if you count the number of driveways from private residences from 78th Street to 103rd Street, there are 29 driveways that would exit onto Pacific Street, and 3 of those driveways during that 25-block span actually are on a corner, and they have an option, because they have kind of a curved driveway, to exit onto a side street. So there's only 26 private residential units in a 25-block span that exit directly onto Pacific Street. Here, what they're proposing are to have 21 units exit from one driveway onto Pacific Street. We are very concerned about the safety of that, the congestion that will cause, and we think it's totally incompatible with our neighborhood. The last time this proposal was put before the planning board, they didn't give notice to us, to the neighbors. And so there was kind of more of an informal proceeding or informal procedure. We met at the church, and there were, I didn't count, but there were a bunch of us from the neighborhood and from Pacific Park who voiced our objection to this for the same reasons I'm explaining now. My understanding is that those objections weren't relayed to this board the last time this came up. So I just want to make sure, and I think one of the owners from Pacific Park also sent a letter to the planning board outlining that owner's objections and concerns. So we have other owners here, and they may fill in some gaps that I've left, but we'd ask that you consider not approving this preliminary plat for those reasons. Thank you.
Joe, can I ask you a real quick question?
Sure.
So, are you the head of the home, or you have like an HOA or a?
We have an
condo
HOA. I'm the one of my secretary treasurer.
Okay, so obviously this is pretty nice piece of ground, nice parcel of ground, nice area of Omaha too as well. What would you like to see there?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, something not quite so dense. I mean, 21 units on the same space we have seems totally inconsistent with our neighborhood. So that would be great. I think having more than one driveway or ingress and egress in and out of the place would make sense too. But those are the things we're all concerned about.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, George. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Ann Clark, 1012 South 93rd Court. I'm in the same unit as Joe is. I would like to invite any one of you to come stand at 93rd and Pacific with me, my corner, and watch the traffic in the morning and in the afternoon. Pacific Street has a lot of traffic, and this is what concerns most of the neighbors I have talked to. And then to answer your question, sir, what we would like to see there, we would like to see something there. What is there now is a real eyesore, but we would like to see a nice development, maybe 12 units, it's just downscale it a little bit. 21 are just too many. Back to the traffic, I was rear-ended at 93rd and Pacific a number of years ago, and it happens. People come east on Pacific Street, and they're coming down the hill, and they've been in a 40-mile-per-hour zone, and they're coming down the hill to 93rd or 94th, which is where this proposal is, and they're still going 45 miles an hour sometimes. Now, they shouldn't be, because at 96, that goes to 35 miles per hour. But It's just scary. And if somebody is distracted, if they're, if their phone rings or they get a text or something, it's just too easy not to see that car that is stopped waiting to turn into this unit, Pacific Rose, or our unit, Pacific Park. And then to just reinforce what Joe said, everyone I talk to in the neighborhood can't believe that 21 units would be considered now when it was denied a number of years ago. I would like to know what the difference is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Terry Anderson, I'm moderator of Sunset Hills Baptist Church. Our property adjoins the proposal on the west side of the proposal. When this came up a year or two ago, we negotiated, I should say, or discussed having some sort of a permanent barrier between the property and our property. The single dwelling property was never a problem, but considering there would be 6 or more properties adjoining our property, we were concerned about guests using our property for parking. I won't get into detail, but there have been several things over the years of rather unchurch-like things that have happened in our back property. It happens. But we were trying to avoid people thinking they could just use our property as a parking lot. There is a curb cut near the property line on our property. We had negotiated to the point of having agreement with First Management to have a permanent metal fence. It would be aluminum, but it would look wrought iron. It would not be a solid. We had progressed from a berm to a short plastic fence, but we were in agreement with First Management for that. When we got the notice of this hearing, we looked at the design, and there's no reference to any barrier between properties. We would like to have that restored. Ron Reed, our stewardship ministry leader, is here. He has been in contact with the city, with the planning department, with Mr. LaRocco. We have tried to reach First Management in the last 2 weeks and have gotten no responses. So we're here voicing our position and would like to have that permanent fence reinstated into the plan. And I could answer any questions. Mr. Reed could answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
My name is Ronald Reed. I'm the Stewardship Ministry Leader on the Minister Council Board for Sunset Hills Baptist Church at 9416 Pacific. We border this property on the west. I have been in communication with you all and by email, was concerned that a letter might not get here in time. I have supporting communication about our agreement for a fence. They even supplied for us a look of what this fence would look like, which we approved. It was drawn in. We have a signed agreement with First Management for them to provide that if they do this property. We have similar concerns as others with the high volume of traffic in that area. Our own secretary, church secretary, was rear-ended last year on just turning into our church property for work. So our position is not to vote for this to go forward without that fence that has been agreed to. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Dan, would you like to address any issues raised?
Sure. Dan Dozal, Eric Griffin, 3552 Farnham. As far as fence goes, we didn't, John's left our firm, he was with the engineer. We're happy to provide the fence as per the agreement. That was no problem. That wasn't intentional by any means of trying to get it, so I'd appreciate if you make that a condition of the passage. As far as ingress egress, my only comment would be that if you have two ins and outs so close together, you actually, I think Ryan would agree, that you actually create another hazard because of the proximity of that. So the one ingress egress use witness or ingress egress point is about the only solution on this property to go there. There's no other public streets that we have access to. Density is tough with the infrastructure that's provided and all that. They've run numbers. I wasn't a party to that, but this is the step down housing is smaller units, smaller lots. As people age, it gets my age, they're looking for something smaller, but they don't want to leave the neighborhood. We feel that this provides that opportunity to stay in the neighborhood and
Hey,
have
Dan,
something more
can
manageable.
you explain smaller units, like how big are they?
You know, I don't
Do you
have that
expect
information.
one car, maybe two car families, or give a little more detail?
Typically, I think he's looking at empty nesters. You know, whether that's 2 cars or 1 car, depends, whether it's any car sometimes. I've seen this where they don't drive at all, they're in their 80s and they've given up driving. That's the goal. Doesn't mean he won't sell to a starter home as a young couple, but give him a price point and all that.
Starter, I mean, price.
Last I heard was $350. About $350 a unit.
How big?
I don't have that script. I apologize. I must have some static on my shirt.
Yeah, sorry, that might be you. I don't know.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing.
Sorry about that. That was acting up yesterday at City Council too, I'm not sure. Yeah, I can address a few of the items. Yeah, there's history related to this site. Most recently, it was before Planning Board and was approved by City Council last year for the same number of units. It was for one platted lot, as the applicant's representative had mentioned, switching from the condo regime into individual platted lots. Regarding density, upon approval of the rezoning to R5, which is classified as low-density residential in the Omaha Master Plan, so staff is supportive of that zoning change. There are no waiver requests regarding density. You know, within the R5 district, you can do basically 14.5 units per acre. This is less than what is allowed by the R5 district. I understand it might be more dense than some of the area at large, but staff is comfortable with what is being proposed. Regarding the fence, obviously you heard the applicant state that they are willing to do the fence. I want to point out that there should not be a condition added for the subdivision plat because that is there's no fence requirement. So I think it's good just to get it on the record, and Dan is, you know, working with him for years, very trustworthy and honest. So, you know, him stating that on the record, you know, I fully believe that, but there's no site plan that's being locked down or approved with today's submittal. So it's a plat to convert the site into the developable lots and the rezoning. So while, you know, there's every intention of this is what they're building, there could be small tweaks with that site plan that is reviewed at the time of building permit. So, you know, staff doesn't have the ability to lock down a fence. Obviously, you heard Dan say that though, and you know, that could also be said at City Council and put on the record.
Eric, will this come back for final plat?
Yes, this would come back for final plat. You know, it's kind of the same deal. You know, there's no PUD, there's no use permit, there's no site plan that's attached with this request. I would defer to Ryan Haas regarding traffic if there are any questions or access to the site. You know, as is customary, the Well, that's okay.
You're being shadowed.
Shadows, man. You better behave.
You know, yes, so this part of our city, there are multiple driveways, there are multiple street connections that come out to the arterials. It is not set up in the same manner that we develop newer parts of our jurisdiction and city. It is what it is. They had different policies back when this grid system was set up in this part of our city, but I guess I would open it up for Ryan to specifically come up with a few comments regarding the access.
Ryan Haas with the Public Works Department. Just to follow up a little bit on what Eric said there. Anytime we have an infill project, that we can run into challenges like he mentioned, and in this case, if there was another street available to serve as the site access, that's where we would have directed the applicant to take access from. It was mentioned during the testimony, at one point they pursued an option to potentially go through OPPD's site. That was our suggestion. We can't obviously require OPPD to allow access through their site. So for better or worse, the only frontage is along Pacific for this site. So as with any infill project, we do then have to carefully weigh the pros and cons and the various impacts of a proposed project. To point out, 21 units, certainly that's an increase relative to what's there today, and that's acknowledged that there is a traffic impact based on that proposed change. Ultimately, we have to evaluate it on a case-by-case basis based on the available infrastructure and weigh those impacts and forming our recommendations. And again, it is an increase in the number of trips as proposed. What it came down to, we did recommend for approval of the previous project. We're recommending approval of this project. For example, though, we don't just recommend every infill project for approval. Early on in discussions on this site, we did have a developer who wanted to pursue a daycare on this site, a substantially sized daycare, which that generates a lot of trips, especially in those peak times. And so that was something we evaluated and said that there's no way we can support this. That impact would be too great. So if there's any specific other questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but just to kind of walk you guys through the kinds of things that we looked at on this site specifically and generally with infill projects.
Ryan, did you figure out the number of trips, additional trips that would generate if you had all 21 units?
I can't speak to the specific numbers. I don't have them in front of me. We were asked that last time. The city has a threshold where after a certain number of trips, we require a traffic study, and that's 100 trips in the worst case peak hour. I do recall that this one was well short of that, on the order of magnitude of 20 or 30 trips in the peak hour total. So, and then you start to split them up coming and going from each direction. It really starts to kind of water down that impact. Again, there will be more trips turning in and out of there, and that's not without the issues. The Pacific Street is challenged because there's no left turn lanes, there's no medians. So there will be some more turns if this project is approved. But ultimately, again, it's a relatively low number compared with some of the other intersections that we see up and down Pacific Street.
When you're looking at those trips and such, if it's a step-down neighborhood, as Dan has said, maybe people that have retired, does that factor into the trips, or do you just do it based on the number of units that are there?
Yeah, it's a great question. The manual we use to calculate the number of trips for a proposed project is a nationally recognized standard reference document called the ITE Trip Generation Manual. And it actually splits out housing types into different. So there'd be single-family detached housing. There's a whole set of traffic studies where we know the rate given a number of detached units. In this case, it would be looked at as single-family attached, and those are calculated at a different rate, again, based on hundreds or even thousands of traffic studies across the country. So again, I don't have those numbers in front of me, so I can't tell you specifically, but yeah, that would be factored into that evaluation.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if, just circling back, it's always a team effort up here, so getting feedback, so I appreciate Director Fanslau. He did make the mention, and I hadn't discussed it yet, but there is one waiver that is required. It's not related to the density, but it is the setback for the garage of these units to the private street. So there is one of the conditions that this case will have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals before receiving any applicable building permits. The Zoning Board of Appeals does lock down site plans, so we could have that fence shown through that process, and I'm sure the applicant would be more than willing, and the Zoning Board of Appeals could also condition it based on that. So there is that avenue to lock it down with the plan, so I appreciate the assist there from our team. I don't think I have anything else to add, so unless there's further questions from the board, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning from R1 to R5, approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 7 conditions.
Thank you, Eric. Do we have a motion?
I move approval of the rezoning from R1 to R5 and approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 7 conditions outlined in the report.
Debbie, please take a vote.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Okay, thank you for your testimony. Okay, let's go to item number 18, case C10-22-317, C10-22-325, Forever North Real Estate LLC. The request is for rezoning from LI to NBD with approval of the ACI 1 Area Civil and Civic Importance Overlay District. Location is 2505 North 24th Street. May we hear from the applicant?
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. David Levy, Baird Home Law Firm, 1700 Farnham Street, with Ashley Kuhn, Blair Freeman, 4616 Dodge Street. Happy to answer any questions, difficult questions to Ashley, please.
Ashley, you probably should say your address as well.
4616 Dodge.
This is a rezoning from LI to NBD to provide for a mixed income housing project. The housing project itself, with the rezoning, then should be able to proceed.
Yes. So, yep.
Go ahead.
So it'll have 80,000 square feet of retail office, and that would be on the 24th Street side. 80 units of affordable housing would be on the Ohio Street side, and then a standalone daycare facility would be on the Lake Street side. And then we are in the process of acquiring the lots on the opposite side of Ohio Street from the city right now, and that would be a single family for sale homes, about 10 of those.
What are you going to do with those lots?
The Ohio Street residential, so a single family for sale, and they would go more of an affordable for sale, so with like a Omaha 100 type setup. Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Great use of property here too.
Such a good use. We're so excited about it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Any
Thank
other
you.
proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, any opponents? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Eric?
Yeah, so all cases that are left off the consent aren't necessarily due to being controversial. This is one of the cases, so I'm glad to see it didn't. Sometimes they extend out for a few hours and you feel bad because they kept, but no, but we rather leave them off consent, just to make sure that, there's a few words spoken about it, and this is a great project here at 24th and Lake, and there's a lot of development happening, so we wanted to have that opportunity to put it on the record. So staff recommends approval of the ACI overlay district and approval of the rezoning from LI to MBD.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the ACI 1 Area of Civic Importance Overlay District and approval of the rezoning from LI to NBD.
Second.
Debbie, please take a vote.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to item number 24, I believe. Was on layover, was taken off. It's case C8-22-321. Applicants Nick Brenner, Menard, Inc. Request is the approval of a special use permit to allow convenience storage in the CC District. Location northwest of 205th Street and Cumberland Drive. May we hear from the proponent, or for the applicant?
Good afternoon, Nick Brenner, 5101 Menard Drive, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Just wanted to talk today, hoping that there may be a different motion. We did get the staff report. We have agreed to do most of the things on that report. We are in the process of revising the site plan as well. The only couple things we are working through yet internally is the facade and the height of the entrance for the unit, and I'm confident we can work with staff to accommodate those comments. So I'm asking for an approval based on conditionally approved on the condition that we satisfy the staff comments. What this will allow us to do is to keep this in line and in track with the plat that was approved earlier today. We view these as one project. One project is not going to go forward without the other one. We have a list of end users for those outlots that are going to be generated from this plat. We have tabled those discussions until we get approval here. Most of those end users are hopeful to start construction in 23, which, so in order to get the approvals through the city, we need to get started sooner rather than later. So I'm just asking for this approval, conditioned again on satisfaction of the comments, so we can continue to keep this project moving forward. But again, I didn't see really any issues satisfying the comments we did receive from the city.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Nick, just a quick question while you're up here. Would your plan be to, for the outdoor, the vehicle storage area, would you add more units, or would you enclose that area, or what are your thoughts?
Correct. We would add more units. So we, it is a preference on whether we have the outdoor parking. We do it as a, to give variety to people. We could care less if it's there or not. So we'll just take those same buildings you see on the other side of the plans and plop them where those outside units are. And the buffer, we're able to take some out of the drive aisle to get to 20 feet in that one corner. We fell a little short, so.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Okay, any other proponents wishing to?
Yeah, thank you.
Any opponents that wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public hearing. Eric?
Yeah, well, it's good to hear that the applicant has, taken our comments into consideration, and sounds like they're willing to make those changes. Staff is not willing to modify our recommendation without, seeing a site plan with there being a special use permit. But I can say that we can get this back on the next agenda, get some revised material submitted to us. With the final plat and the subdivision agreement documents that are going to be needed to put that together, laying the special use permit over 1 month would not delay that effort in getting to city council. I'm very confident in that. So, we can work with the applicant, give them some additional days into all of next week to get revised materials back to us. We think that would be the best approach. So that being said, staff would stick with our layover recommendation.
Okay, any further discussion? We have a vote, or a recommendation.
Motion to lay over. Second.
Debbie, please take the vote.
Pate?
Yes.
Sodolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. All right, I think we're on item number 29. Case C7-21-121. Applicant Todd Jakobovic, I hope I'm saying that right, Elkhorn Youth Sports Association, and Carol Ash UBT Bank. The request is for the approval of major amendment to the conditional use permit to allow indoor sports and recreation in the CC district. Location is 702 North 210th Street. May we hear from the applicant?
Yeah, good afternoon. Eric Williams Olson, 2111 North 67th Street, here on behalf of the client. The proposal in front of you is for an amendment to the conditional use permit for a sign waiver for the West Omaha Sports Complex, the newly built West Omaha Sports Complex at 210th and Cumberland Street. So here available for any questions you may have. We have the client here as well as the sign company here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Eric. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, any opponents wishing to speak? Yes, sir. Please come forward. Your name and address, please.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Baker. I represent Katie and Charlie Dehoney. Address of QTAC is 1650 Farnham. Katie and Charlie live at 21020 Shiloh Street, Elkhorn, Nebraska, 68022. So I'd like to reserve a little bit of my time to discuss some legal issues that I believe exist with the proposed major amendment to the conditional use permit. And I'd like to invite Katie and Charlie to come up and just kind of offer some of their thoughts on the proposal If that's acceptable, I'd invite them to come up and I'll return just to kind of cover some of the legal issues that I believe exist.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie Dehoney. I live at, or actually we own the property at 21020 Shiloh Street in Elkhorn. Unfortunately, we were kind of just recently made aware of the request for an exception. My husband and I bought this property a year ago and have gone through the iterations and the process of blueprints and working on a renovation. So we don't currently live there, so we're not there every day and didn't see a mailing come in. I think one other next door neighbor was made aware, but because it was Thanksgiving, they didn't even know that the letter came in. They had been out of town. So by the time I was able to make them aware this weekend and kind of circulate to our neighborhood that would all be impacted by the illuminated signs at the new UBT Sports Complex, I have been able to get, I obviously wrote a personal letter. The two next door neighbors that all of us back to Dodge and to the new complex have written personal letters in opposition to the illuminated sign, specifically on the south side of the building. We also have a list of 47 of our neighbors who would also be impacted, as we all share the common facilities, the trail system that goes throughout the entire neighborhood as well. I have sent that over to Jake in planning, but I also have with me today the list of the names and addresses of all of our homeowners that are in opposition to an illuminated sign on the south side, as well as their emails asking to be included in a petition if it gets that far. I am here today, obviously, in opposition to the applicant's request for an exception to the City of Omaha's Municipal Code of Ordinances for the new UBT Sports Complex located at 702 North 210th Street. I specifically am in opposition to the 123-foot, 317 square foot illuminated sign on the south side of the building. I am asking that the City Planning Department denies the approval of this exception. I am also requesting and strongly encouraging the applicants to engage in a conversation with the parties that would be impacted by the illuminated sign. I believe we can come to a mutually beneficial agreement on a signage plan that will allow UBT to display their name, lead visitors to their location, and market their respective businesses without negatively impacting the residents and families that make up a large part of the community that visits, invests in, and supports these communities. My family obviously owns the property that is directly behind UBT, and the entirety of our backyard faces the south side of the new UBT building. We diligently searched for 2 years to find a property in the Skyline Ranches neighborhood that our family could make into a forever home, and felt lucky to be able to purchase our home in November of 2021. This neighborhood was developed in 1960 with the intention of creating a nature and animal-focused community. The neighborhood consists of 235 homes and 150 acres of common land that includes miles of horse walking trails that connect each home. These nature trails in the 60-acre equestrian center are frequented by many homeowners and are a large part of why residents choose this unique community. These trails and the residential park that are adjacent to the south side of the UBT building are in danger of being subject to 123 feet of marketing illumination. Personally, my husband and I, our property being located directly across from it, would mean that 317 square feet would illuminate into every rear window of our home, including our kitchen, living room, dining room, and our boys' bedrooms. It would also mean that anytime our family would like to be out enjoying our backyard, we would do so under a neon LED haze. Beyond the obvious detriment to the aesthetics of the view, light pollution is directly linked to compromised health and disrupting ecosystems. As a human, I can choose to not enjoy my backyard at night, close our blinds, and stay indoors. But the many animals that frequent our property cannot. Our family specifically purchased this home for the land with the intent to spend as much time outdoors with our sons as possible. If the planning board approves this exception, it'll set a dangerous precedent in Omaha for neighbors. The planning board already approved the amendment for a conditional use permit to allow an indoor sports and recreation facility in the CC district. Approving this amendment requires that the planning board makes the following findings before approval. The proposed development, together with any modifications, will be compatible with the criteria established in section 55885. That criteria specifically states it is intended to protect residential neighborhoods and encourage developments which minimize adverse effects on surrounding properties and the community at large. This new request for illuminated signs facing directly into a neighborhood is not compatible with protecting the neighborhood or minimizing adverse effects. Why do we need illuminated signs? In the past, neon signs help drivers identify a business and lead them to their destination after dark. Today, anyone driving to a new location for the first time is following an app that will lead them directly there. Specifically for sports complexes, the business services repeat customers, and anyone in the basketball community knows exactly where to go if told they are playing at UBT Sports Complex. Today, entrances in the parking lot identify the specific buildings for parking and entrances. The lighted signs by the entrance into the parking lot on the east side and by the building's only available entry doors on the north side are justified during evening service hours, and our community at whole has no issue with that. The large south side Union Bank and Trust Sports Complex serves no purpose other than marketing. The building is situated so that the sign would only be visible to drivers on Dodge driving both east and west when they are passing the building based on its location. It is going to be far too late and too dangerous to exit once they see the sign. In reviewing the City of Omaha Planning Department memo dated November 30th, I could not help but wonder if the members of the Planning Department who considered the request waiver acceptable based on having a short street frontage were made aware of several key details. One, the sports facility and applicant is already being called UBT South and is considered by the community as an extension of the original UBT Sports Complex. The new complex's entry doors are located several yards from the entry doors of the original and existing UBT Sports Complex, in which the UBT sign is prominently illuminated and displayed to the east side. These facilities share a parking lot and customer base. The older UBT complex has the same exact illuminated sign, UBT Union Bank and Trust Sports Complex, on a large side of their building that is visible from Cumberland Drive, as well as their street frontage on 210th Street. The older UBT complex has no signage whatsoever on the main thoroughfare, Cumberland Drive, leading to both facilities. To me, this is the absolute best placement for a sign if the intent is for it to direct visitors to your location and it does not face any neighborhoods. The West Omaha Sports Complex, who is part of the applicant, also owns the undeveloped property adjacent to the building under WOSC LLC. They had all of the resources and ability to change the orientation and shape of the building to allow for greater street frontage. In regards to the building itself, our family was elated with the addition of the second UBT Sports Complex through Elkhorn Attack. Since moving to Omaha in 2019, my husband and I have managed and coached 9 teams and seasons of basketball between our 3 sons. We are active contributors to the program, spend countless hours at these courts, and pay lots of money for our family to be part of the organization as players and spectators. My husband and I joke that of course we would find a property that looks over the sports complexes, as our family spends countless hours there during winter. We actively support anything that encourages youth sports organization and congregation. What we do not support is the deceptive use of exceptions that allows oversized neon marketing to the detriment of our neighborhood. In contrast, all of the newly erected commercial buildings that have come in over the last year and are directly adjacent to the new sports complex on Cumberland Drive. This includes Elkhorn Training Camp and their most recent expansion, the Omaha Sports and Games Company, Disc Store, Omaha Print Shop, and Extra Mile e-commerce have elected not to display illuminated signs on the south side of their buildings. It reduces light pollution and protects the aesthetic, well-being, and enjoyment for the surrounding neighbors. We ask that the applicants strongly consider doing the same. Lastly, if I could ask each member of the applicant party and planning board one question. Would you welcome a 123-foot illuminated sign into your home? I'm positive I would hear a unanimous and resounding no. I'm asking that the board take all of the above into consideration and do not approve the exception to allow this signage and allow us time to work with UBT and the rest of the applicants to come up with a better plan. I appreciate your time and consideration on this important issue.
Actually, a real quick Hey, question Katie. before you
Yes.
before you leave the podium there. So I'm just looking at a real small map here, but you're on the south side of Dodge Street, correct? You're on the
Correct.
opposite side there. Looks like you've got some trees lined along Dodge Street there that would probably act as a buffer.
Unfortunately, no. During the winter, they all lose their leaves. So really, you have direct access to everything across for you. It's also the elevation of where the homes are located. So these are acreage properties, so they're 2 to 3 acres. So the bottoms will be closer to the street, but up high, we are at a level where I actually also submitted some photos to Jake, but if not, I'm happy to show you as well kind of what our views look like from our backyards and from within our homes.
You can put them on, you have them with
Put
you, you
'em
can
on
put
the-
them in the overhead
Yep.
there.
Yeah, we'll go this way. So that is a view from the backyard of our neighbor, since they are actively living there right now, and obviously that's the UBT complex right now, and that's where the proposed sign that all of us are in opposition to. Again, we understand that they want to use it for marketing, for leading people to the right place, but right now, really, all that would do is illuminate into our backyards.
That is the new building, though, correct?
That is the new
okay,
building,
That's the
yes.
actual building.
Correct, yep, that's the building, the gray one. Yes, and then this is looking into our backyards from where the sign would be. So the top is our property here. So you can see these trees really don't create much of a buffer. Really, it is a little bit of the street, but not anything that's raised, and that building is definitely in a higher elevation.
Katie, do you know how far that is?
So we were, only 2 of us received notices, so I know we're within 300 feet.
Of the 60.
Oh, actually, I do have a better,
Yeah, so there's 2 parcels. Yeah.
so here is the new building. They also own this vacant land. I'm not sure what the intention is there. This is our property. This is our next door neighbors, and then the Andersons, and I have submitted letters from them as well.
Yeah, so just for a little background, the conditional use permit had the entire shape of the 2 parcels when it came in. There was an administrative plat later on that split it into the 2 lots.
Okay, any other questions for Kate? Okay. Anyone else want to speak?
I'd like to add very quickly, I'm Charlie DeHoney, 21020 Shiloh Street, Elkhorn, Nebraska. I'm very pleased with the level of detail that my wife has taken upon herself to present to the committee today, and we appreciate the opportunity to come and speak on behalf of our neighbors. I want to also just expand upon the fact that we are very involved with the Elkhorn sports community. I was personally congratulated the family that is the applicants, the Jakopoviches, when they were able to execute this building. It's a great service to the community, but it's also worth noting that they're one of 3 sports complexes, and I know my wife laid this out in her letter, but each of those other sports complexes supports the sports community for the youth. I coach 3 sports throughout the year. I'm the head coach of about 7 teams between our 3 sons. So I spend most of my time at that complex during the winter, and then after basketball, I'll be directly across the street at Elkhorn Training Camp until it gets warm enough to take my 3 ball teams outside. So we rely on these facilities, and if Todd and Danny were here today, I would say to them, again, congratulations for being able to get this done. It was a monumental effort. The community needed it. I would encourage them to follow suit with their neighbors, the Union Bank and Trust Center to the north and Elkhorn Training Camp to the east, who have all taken a very modest sign approach that is facing the internal frontage road, because the only reason I can come up with for running a massive sign parallel to Dodge is marketing for Union Bank and Trust. As a member of the community, we moved here because I'm an entrepreneur and I acquired a company here in Omaha. We've since sold that company. I've continued to invest in the startup community. I spend a lot of time in the entrepreneurial and the business community here, and I would implore Union Bank and Trust to consider the neighbors who are also the customers of their bank to be more responsible with the use of their funds for their signage.
Have you had direct conversations? Sounds like you know the applicant well.
I've been to their home and they don't have a huge sign facing in their
No,
backyard.
I understand. Okay. But have you had conversations with them directly about this?
We were just advised, we just received this letter a matter of days ago, And Todd and Danny have actually had to close down the facility because they're refinishing the floors. I've seen this guy putting signs up over there when I'm running practices, though. And so I am like, we're here today to ask for a layover so that we can engage in a conversation with the organization to come up with a plan. I desperately want to see them be successful in their business. I know that it costs them a lot more money to build that facility than they originally thought with all of the supply chain issues and labor shortages. But we need time to work with them to come up with a plan that's reasonable and that isn't going to cause undue stress to the neighborhood and the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Anyone else speaking in opposition? Jonathan, you come back.
I'm back. Thank you, guys. Well, I think Katie and Charlie did an excellent job. Well, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, Jonathan Baker, 1650 Farnham, QTech Rock, representing Katie and Charlie of 21020 Shiloh Street. So like I said, Katie and Charlie, I think, laid it out very, very well, explained kind of the basis for their opposition. I just kind of want to note a couple things. Just keep in mind that Section 55-836, Table 2, which is the part of the ordinance to which the applicants are seeking an exception, it has the formula for granting the total sign permitted area, and under the formula, it would be, I believe, 292 square feet. But they're seeking an exception to use 521 square feet of signage, and 317 of that square footage is going to this 123-foot sign. So this isn't, a small exception. This is a major exception. And with regard to Section 55-836, there are myriad options available under the ordinance to satisfy the needs of the people who need to use signage. It offers ground signage, memorial signage, pole signage. So this isn't, the applicants don't need to live or die by this proposal to the major amendment to the conditional use permit. And so Section 55-836 is under Article 18 of Chapter 55 of the Omaha Code of Ordinances. And I just kind of want to go over Section 55-821, which codifies expressly the purposes and intentions of the Article 18, which is where 55-836 is codified into what they seek an exception to. So there are a couple important codified purposes. 55-821 explicitly provides that the regulations codified under Article 18, quote, recognize the need to maintain the attractive appearance of the community and to provide for adequate business identification, advertising, and communication. So that, end quote. That's the purpose of Article 18 and everything that falls under it. And it further expressly provides its intentions, which include, there are 5, and 3 of them include to ensure that the informational needs of sign users are met in a way that is compatible with the surrounding urban environment, to provide flexibility for sign and graphics users to communicate effectively within certain standards, and to recognize the special characteristics of specific areas and the impact of graphics on urban environmental design. And I would argue that granting the requested waiver here, it neither advances nor in any other way fulfills the codified intentions of Article 18. I think really Katie and Charlie's testimony speaks for itself. If the purpose is to fulfill the informational needs of sign users, and balancing kind of the compatibility with the urban environment, it doesn't advance that, because this proposed sign as a parallel roadway sign offers little informational value, as Katie mentioned, and it's not compatible as they live 600 feet away from a 123, or what's proposed to be a 123 foot LED illuminated sign, and it intrudes on the thrust of their neighborhood, which is an equestrian reserve. And I think regardless of where you live, you don't really want that illuminated intrusion into your household. I could go through all the purposes of 55-821, including permitting flexibility within certain standards. I think granting the waiver just ignores the flexibility embodied in 5586 Table 2, which, as I mentioned, it's replete with options for signage, and I think that granting the exception just abandons the standards that the city has set to fulfill these goals. And it just, it's Article 18, those regulations were enacted specifically with the recognition of the special characteristics of specific areas and the impact of graphics on urban environmental design. So the ordinance to which the applicants seek an exception, it contemplates the very issue, I believe, that we face right now. And there's a reason that for a CC district, they've limited the total square footage of signage to 1.5 times the frontage area. As a commercial community district, it's part of the community. This isn't, it's not like a McDonald's off, in Pelham, Iowa or whatever. It's in the community. It's not just off the interstate. This is part of the community, and it is interfering with Katie and Charlie's with their home ownership. One other thing, I don't want to bore you guys too much with all the legalese, especially at the end of the day. My understanding of the approval of a conditional use permit, it requires, and this is under 5583H1, I think Katie mentioned this, it requires the planning director, planning board, and this is a quote, or city council to make 4 findings, including that the proposed development, together with any modifications applicable thereto, will be compatible with the criteria established in section 55-885, titled Criteria for Review and Evaluation. We're concerned about the recommendation of the planning director. In his November 30th memo, we saw that there was a recommended approval of the major amendment to the conditional use permit, but the approval appears, based on the memorandum to y'all, it appears to be based exclusively on the shape of the building and the amount of frontage. There's no mention of the evaluation and review criteria, which appears to be mandatory in the approval of the request. So we're concerned that there wasn't the mandatory analysis conducted before recommending. I guess I just want to close with, I think we've covered most of it. The Nebraska court, the judiciary has recognized that in our society, quote, to have the use and enjoyment of one's home interfered with by attacks upon one's senses is a serious harm in light of the social value of allowing people to enjoy their homes. And I can offer a citation if you want, but you probably don't need it. And we think that the proposed signage would threaten that harm here. Like Katie said, put yourselves in their shoes. It's an obnoxiously large sign, and I think that they're willing to work with the applicants to figure out a way that more effectively fulfills the needs of the applicants while minimizing any of the issues that residents of the opposite community might have. So we're free to answer any other questions that you guys have for us. But again, thank you for your time and thank you for considering what we've had to say today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, does the applicant want to respond to any of that?
Let's see if there's any other opponents first.
Any other opponents before I do that? Seeing none, go ahead.
Yeah, Eric Williams, 2111 North 67th Street. I'll bring Pedro up from Omaha Neon with the sign company. He has a couple exhibits. Most of it's already been discussed, I think, with the distances from the building, which is 600 and some feet, 650 feet, I believe. I think he noted it too. So I think it's just a matter of understanding of, you know, the discussion that the city has also had about what the allowance is and what will be allowed for the signage on that side of the site. The client, UBT, Carol from UBT, is also here to speak as needed on the plan for providing the signage as it is on the building. So anything, we can bring Carol up, or we can also bring
Let's have the sign
Pedro.
person come up if we could.
Yeah, Pedro.
Please.
Hello, Pedro Vargas, Omaha Neon, 1120 North 18th Street.
You said Pedro?
Yes.
Can you describe like the lighting of the sign? It's not neon, it's now LED. Is that, how bright is that? And how far is it, you know, expected to project off of the building? Is there times when it will come, you know, it will dim or come off? Just give some detail, please.
The customer can choose to put it on a timer and shut it off at 9 p.m., 10 p.m. They don't need to run it all night. I wouldn't think they would. Most organizations like this don't. The illumination output can be done. We could run it through a matrix system. We did not do that before here. To give you the illumination output, this sign is equivalent to the south side sign for the CHI Medical Health Center that went up a few years ago when we changed the name of that organization to CHI. I don't believe there was anybody from the apartment complexes that were 300 or 400 feet away across the 480 up in the air before we installed those or got permits to do that, nor have there been any complaints since. But that sign is larger than what we're proposing here and closer to residential apartment complexes downtown, which there's many examples that we've installed and permitted under the normal code for large letters that face residential houses much closer than 600 feet and have not had them call and complain. This particular sign is individual channel letters with low voltage LEDs inside of them. So it's not like a high voltage neon glowing sign. It's not like an electronic or message reader board. You know, just to kind of give you some information, they could, without going through the conditional use amendment and or the ZBA, elect to put a 10-foot by 15-foot electronic reader board on the back of that building to advertise their sports advertisements and activities, which would be 10 times as bright as this 123-foot long individual letter sign with, you know, versus a big square they could permit and put on the back. So, like I said, I guess if I would have known we had this much pushback from it, I could have probably gone in the last 2 years and printed out addresses, sizes of signs, and mapped them on a residential map and said, here's residential areas within 200 or 300 feet. Since they've been up for years and before, we never had any, you know, complaints before or complaints to the city afterwards on these low voltage LED lit letter signs.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any more testimony?
Eric, can you come up, please?
Yes.
Now,
Yes, sir.
Pedro said that you could put that on a shut-off switch or, you know, at certain times. Is that something that you guys are looking at doing rather than pay bills all night long at 2 in the morning? Or
Yeah, I'm just confirming. Yeah, they'll be turning it off. I don't know what the hours are going to be, but yeah, I would assume they'll be turning them off at a certain hour.
Okay.
As well.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any other testimony or any questions? All right, we'll close the public hearing then and hear from Eric.
Yeah, so obviously we have a major amendment to the conditional use permit. Any such waivers supported by the planning board would also need to go to the zoning board of appeals. Zoning board of appeals cannot hear waivers that are not in support by this board though. So just to make that clear, you know, obviously you have our recommendation report. We stand by that as the department in our review. I guess it could be pointed out that if they eliminated other signage on the building and just had the south-facing sign, they could have a 292 square foot illuminated sign by building permit without coming through the major amendment or the ZBA process. But yes, we are here before because there is a package of wall signs on the different facades. This board has authority, obviously, to change the modifications or recommendations. I don't know, outside of that, other than staff standing by our report. So this is scheduled for tomorrow's Zoning Board of Appeals. If there were to be a layover or if there's any changes, those would become effective. If this was laid over or denied, it would not go to the Zoning Board tomorrow. It would just, it would not be heard at that meeting.
Hey, Eric, a question for you too, because
Yep.
Jonathan had.
Me, Eric? Yes.
Listen, I'm sorry. Jonathan had said something on there that maybe there wasn't a whole lot of research done on this project. I can guarantee that everything that runs through the planning department is researched and looked at by you and by David. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes up a good portion of our month each cycle. So no, we have a deadline date when we receive applications. The next deadline date is this upcoming Monday, for example, for the January 4th meeting, I believe. So once we receive those applications, we meet internally as a staff to kind of get together and just see what we've received. We do assign the individual cases to a specific city planner who then will do research, and we'll circle back a week later for further dialogue and in detailed meetings. So that usually includes upper management along with all of the current planning and urban design and long range staff. So these meetings often take 4 or 5 hours because we're talking about a lot of cases, a lot of different items. During that time, city planners are writing the recommendation reports, reviewing the applicable materials such as Chapter 55 zoning, Chapter 53 subdivision, and any other regulations and codes. We're also receiving input from other city departments and other agencies that we send out the materials to. The following week, we usually then have compiled a recommendation report, which we spent an entire day. So that would have been last Wednesday. We sit through there at about 9 or 10 hours and go through and detail all the cases and all the exhibits, make sure from a department and from a city, and that includes other departments as well, to make sure that the output of the recommendation report is up to satisfaction. So yes, there is a large amount of time spent on each of these cases. So that would have been the case for this one also. I'll put the recommendation out there. We can still have questions and dialogue back and forth if desired, or if you do have questions, just let me know. But staff does recommend approval of the major amendment to the conditional use permit for indoor sports and recreation in the CC district, subject to the 2 conditions in the report.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I'll ask the board if there's any further discussion. If not, then I entertain a motion.
Move approval of the major amendment to the conditional use permit to allow indoor sports and recreation in CC district, subject to the 2 conditions outlined in the report.
Second.
Debbie, please take the vote.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you all for your testimony, and I appreciate the attitude that you have in working with them, and I'm sure they have an open door. We'd want to discuss it further if you like. So, thank you all. Okay, we'll move to item number 30, KC 14-22-323. Applicants, the Planning Board, the approval of the vacation of the alley right-of-way located between Saddle Creek Road and 50th Street, north of Charles Street. Eric, or I guess, hello. Hello from the applicant, yes.
My name is John Green.
Thanks, John.
And I own the property at 4944 Charles Street.
Okay.
Okay, and I don't know, do you have access to the map that was on the back of my letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you may not see in that map, I'm not sure how it looks.
John, are you're not the applicant though, are you?
What's that?
Your opponent,
Excuse me, I'm speaking against. Did I speak out of turn?
Let's pause for a moment.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Okay, you're an opponent.
What's that?
You're an opponent?
Yes, I'm requesting
So
that
then, if you
the,
just wait a minute, we'll hear from Eric, and then
the
we'll ask
approval be
for
denied.
Opponents, thank you.
Well, I guess I would ask, is there, is the adjacent property owner present, or are there any proponents here present? Okay, then I will introduce the case on behalf of the city. So yes, we received a request from the adjacent property owner to the north, a property zone GC that has frontage on Saddle Creek Road. They are requesting the vacation of the east-west alley between 50th Street and North Saddle Creek to be incorporated into their property. Because this is a planning board initiated vacation request, because that allows for the entirety of the alley to go to that adjacent property rather than being split up 50% on each direction or each side of the right-of-way. So as a condition of our recommendation for approval, the city would retain easement for utilities and then remove a 50th Street return that was placed. We would also require that the property be zoned from GC to CC along with the MCC overlay district. So I'll reserve right to further comments after.
Is that going to all three? It looks like there's three properties. Is that going to all three
No,
properties?
no, it is only going to the property to the north. The commercially zoned property to the north, not the, no.
Current GC?
Current GC to the north of the east-west alley.
Okay, see.
It would not, no part of the vacated alley would go to the properties to the south.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a different zoning, right? Okay. All right. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, opponents, would you like to speak?
Hey, there you go.
Here you go.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Name and address.
I don't know.
We need your name
If
and
you
address.
can, pardon me?
Name and address.
Okay.
Yeah.
John Green, 4944 Charles Street.
Okay, there you
go. Okay, my wife and I own that property. I do need to explain that that is a somewhat unique property in that there are two houses that have been on that property for close to 100 years. If you look really close, I don't know if your picture is better than mine, but if you look really close, you'll see the bigger house that faces Charles Street. And there is another cottage or a smaller house. It's always been, I don't know how it was originally built, in the mother-in-law's cottage or a rental or what, but it is on the alley, basically on the alley at the back of the property to the north, on the north side. If I speak against the alley being abandoned, because we would no longer have vehicular access to the cottage, and which is needed, so at least at times. And there is no way to do it from Charles Street. If you look at the lot to the east side of the lot is a pretty steep embankment, except for where the alley is. And so also my understanding is, I think the people that originally brought this to the Planning Commission, I think she has decided that she does not want to do that. That was my understanding the last I spoke to her, that she decided that wasn't the best way to go. And also, just in terms of fairness, I don't think it would be right that property would get all of it. But at any rate, if the alley is abandoned, I have an access problem to the cottage.
How do you access it now?
Well, there's an alley there. I happen to have renters there that don't use the alley very much, but we do use it like when the roof's replaced on the cottage or when somebody's moving in, or we've also made provision to put a driveway off the alley at some point. It's just it has not actually been put there.
It doesn't look on the photo I'm looking at, doesn't look like the part that we're talking about has any type of vehicular access.
There is, because, can I show you?
Yeah, just put it on the
Oh,
overhead.
okay.
Put it on your.
We'll turn it on.
So point to your property, please.
Okay, this is our property.
Okay.
Okay. If the alley goes from Saddle Creek over to 50th Street, and actually I paid to have that alley graded a few years ago and improved. If somebody looks at it really close, they could tell that there's part that goes up to the east side of my property line is a lot better shape than the part that goes from there over to 50th Street. But I'm just saying that if it's no longer an alley, I need a permanent easement. And it shouldn't be something that I have to run and ask for every few years, every time somebody else changes property or something like that. So that's why, in this case, it's better if that remains an alley, a city-owned alley.
Question for you, John.
Mm-hmm.
You said you improved half the alley?
It was a mistake.
Okay. So you didn't do that in conjunction with the city, it sounds like? Okay.
The property management company was going to put in a little driveway immediately behind the cottage and take it off the alley. They came out, they did the work on the alley, and they made it beautiful.
When was that done?
From Saddle Creek, where the curb cut is there on Saddle Creek, all the way up to the east side of our property. Of course, it's been a few years, so you know it's not. But if you look at it, you can tell that it's graded.
Well,
I'm not trying to make that an issue. That just simply is something that's happening.
Yeah, well.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that.
Make it as
You
simple
don't
as
wanna
I
make it
can. I need, I need access to that back. There is no way to drive from the front of Charles Street back there.
Okay.
Our garage is right on the edge of the hill, to the east, excuse me.
Sir, there's an image if I can show the board.
Name and address, please.
Shiloh Jorgensen, 15469 Summerwood Drive, Omaha, Nebraska.
Thank you.
Just a visitor.
Cheers.
But, and I don't know if you can see it because of the lighting here. But is that the back?
That's the back of the cottage, yes.
So you can see I actually used to live down the street. That's the only reason why I know this property.
I don't know which way
But there's
we're
like
looking.
you can't tell because of the car and you can't zoom in because of Google Maps, but there is right here. That's
That's the alley.
Is that car coming down the alley?
That's a parked car.
Parked
No.
car.
That's a parked car, okay.
If you look at that triangular lot that's to the north of us, was once upon a
See how
time
it's
was
like
a service station.
It's like right here, the equivalent. If you were viewing it from this, what I showed on my phone is shown from this direction, so it's looking south towards the cottage.
Got it.
Thanks, Shelley.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Look,
you.
I just used to live down
Come next month, too.
My son's a lawyer, and he said, "Don't say any more than you need to say." So.
Too late.
Eric, I do have a question about the applicant, or, what is the utility and what is the purpose of them getting this
Pardon
piece
me?
of property? I'm actually asking
Oh,
Eric
I'm
this
sorry.
question. But
And there have been times when utilities have used the alley for
I would ask that Mike look through the file as I discuss a few other matters. I'm not aware of any intended use for the alley, so I do not know that answer as we sit here. I guess of probably more immediate concern based on John's testimony, I would suspect it was not known during the review that that was a second unit.
Right.
I was not aware of that until just now. It does look like a detached garage when you see it from the aerial. Obviously, it's tough with the tree coverage, but yeah, when you click on the assessor, it's clearly a second unit that appears to have been built about 100 years ago. So, as it stands right now, I would probably recommend layover to allow us additional time to look into the matter and revisit that. So I guess that's where I would stand. I don't know if Mike has any additional information he could weigh in.
He said no.
Okay, no.
So was this petition initiated with the city or with that with that? Northern,
It's always initiated by the property owner.
By the property
Even when
owner.
it shows up as planning board initiated, that's just the process and how we list it on the planning
got
board
it.
agenda. There was still an application, a fee would have been paid. So it's a little surprising to hear that they might not want it because they would have put money in. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, they're not here. That's not always uncommon when you have right-of-way vacation. Sometimes our applicants are not present. So I can't speak on that behalf. I don't believe Ryan Haas has any additional information. There's a different staff member that processes. So that's why I guess I would request or recommend layover just to take another look so we make sure
I will
we
say,
know the whole story.
and I may be speaking out of turn, but the owner of 1503 50th, North 50th Street, and that property faces 50th Street, but on the north side has alley. She is opposed to it. Also, she was planning on coming with me today and had some issues at work and couldn't come. So otherwise she would have written a letter, but she thought she was coming today. So,
well, I think I'm lost to where we are. We're no longer in,
No,
we're
there's
in
no
here.
more public
No more
testimony,
public
John, so
testimony.
we'll
Okay,
have
that's fine.
to have to
Sorry.
move forward. But
So let's-
at this point, contrary to what our report says, staff would recommend layover.
Okay, do we have a motion to reflect that? Debbie, please take a vote.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sodolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
approved 5-0.
thank you for coming.
Thanks.
So it's laid over for next month to give them time to research into this. So there's no action being taken right now,
You did good so far.
okay? Thank you for that. I think that's the last case that we have, so we need to approve the minutes from the November 2nd meeting.
Approve November minutes.
Debbie, please take a vote. Oh, this should also include the pre-meeting minutes.
Pre-meeting.
So,
Okay, Pate?
Yes.
Sodolongo?
Yes.
Moore? Morris? Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay, do we have a motion to, what?
Oh, you have to, you abstain, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Debbie, take the vote.
Okay. Sodolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris? Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, yes, yes.